Russia is hammering Ukraine into its darkest winter. At least about 6 people are dead and more than 23 others have been injured in the latest Russian attacks, as Putin has grabbed 500 square kilometers. Now, Kyiv at this moment is begging for the $27 billion in weapons aid. At this critical juncture, Europe has slammed the brakes on arms aid. France is blocking supply of Storm Shadow missiles, while Germany has said that it can no longer supply the Patriot air defense systems. Our next report gets more details.
The lights are going out across Ukraine as a brutal winter turns into a weapon of war. Massive Russian strikes have just crippled the energy grid in Kyiv and Odessa, leaving millions without heat or water in sub-zero temperatures. The situation is equally grim in the Ukrainian capital.
We don't have heating right now, but we're holding on. We have electricity, we're managing somehow, and we also have gas as backup. Yes, it was a very difficult evening. 3 missiles struck the industrial district of Kyiv. It was an energy facility that supplied the city of Kyiv. It was seriously damaged. We are all working now. In addition, a lyceum was damaged. 16 multi-story buildings were also damaged.
On the ground, the situation is even more dire. Moscow says its forces have advanced across all frontline sectors, capturing nearly 500 square kilometers of territory since early January.
The troops of the joint grouping continue to advance on all axes. Since the start of January, 17 settlements have been liberated and more than 500 square kilometers of territory have come under our control.
Whether fully verifiable or not, the pressure is visible. Ukrainian troops are stretched, ammunition is rationed, air defenses are thin. The numbers tell a stark story. Ukraine needs at least $27 billion in military equipment in 2026. And crucially, from outside the European Union. European stockpiles are depleted, production is slow, and political unity is fraying. France is now openly drawing lines. President Emmanuel Macron says Europe must protect itself first before sending more missiles east. Paris has opposed an EU proposal to buy British-made Storm Shadow missiles for Ukraine. French officials argue that the funds should be used to strengthen Europe's own defense industry. That's not all. Germany has no remaining capacity to provide Ukraine with additional Patriot systems. That stance has consequences. Ukraine relies on long-range precision weapons to hit Russian supply lines and command hubs. Also, without the Patriot missile defense systems, Ukraine is defenseless against Russian aerial assaults. As Europe debates budgets and borders, missiles keep flying, and Kyiv is left asking a brutal question. How long can it hold if the help slows down now? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, now to put this in perspective, we're joined this broadcast by Mr. Ben Aris, the founder and editor-in-chief of BNE Intel News and also the former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph, is joining us live from Berlin. Mr. Aris, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, what do you make of these reports that are coming in which say that Germany has stopped providing Patriot air defense missiles to the Ukrainians, and France is opposed to the purchase of British-made Storm Shadow missile that was promised to the Ukrainians as part of this $90 billion military aid deal? In your assessment, is Europe now reading the writing on the wall that the coalition of the willing simply does not have the wherewithal to support Ukraine?
Exactly. It's both tragic and slightly unseemly what's going on here. What's happened, the Patriots are key to Ukraine's air defense. It's been fighting this war now for 4 years, and in the summer, Russia massively scaled up a drone and missile assault against Ukraine. It was timed specifically for this time of year, for the coldest part of the year. And they quadrupled or even quintupled the amount of drones and missiles they've been firing. And the idea behind that is also at the start of last year, when Trump came in, he basically took America out of the game, stopped the supplies. He said going forward that Ukraine will be supplied by US hardware only if Europe buys it and then delivers it to Ukraine. And what Russia's been doing is, by increasing these drone and missile attacks, it's been depleting the air defense systems that Ukraine has. And while you can shoot down drones, the missiles in particular, they can only be stopped by Patriot missiles. That's the only thing that Ukraine has. And it's running out. Right. And the problem is in Europe is that it's also run out. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel, and nobody makes Patriots except the Americans. There are no Patriot facilities to make the ammo they need in Europe. Right. And so they've run out. And this is what we're seeing. This is why they're so desperately going to places like Germany. And Germany's, we've given you everything we've got nothing left.
You know, that's a very grim assessment about the military reality of Europe. The European leaders have been saying that Ukraine is our frontier, and if Ukraine is not assisted, then Russia will not stop at Ukraine. With the European leaders now no longer being in a position to come to the defense of Ukraine, what do you think will be the strategy of the European leaders who have been talking about, you know, building up these grand plans of putting in place the defense infrastructure that is needed for the defense of Europe?
I should proceed that by saying that the Americans actually have 60 systems, not just the ammo, systems, which is a big deal. They come with hundreds of rockets in its stockpile, and it's refusing to touch those. So then it all comes onto the Europeans. And as you probably remember, in December, there was this $90 billion loan agreed by the Europeans, 2/3 of which is going to go on military spending. But this is the unseemly part, because Macron's dug his heels in and said, rather than using that money to go to the States and persuade them to dig into their stockpile and provide this badly needed ammo, we should not do that. We should spend all the money in Europe on European defense industry in order to keep the money at home to make some profits. And that's part of developing European defense industry, because Europe also needs to modernize its army. But then, you know, the UK, the Storm Shadows you mentioned, I mean, these are counter missiles that Ukraine can fire back. They're like the cruise missile, extremely powerful. And Macron is sticking his heels in and saying, like, we're not even going to send those. The Germans have a thing called a Taurus missile, which is also extremely powerful. The Germans haven't committed those. Right. And so I don't think there's any strategy here at all. But they've just run out, and now they're arguing amongst themselves about how they're going to spend this $90 billion, which is not going to be spent in Ukraine. It's not going to be sent to Kyiv. It's going to be spent in Europe on its own defenses. And unfortunately, the investment cycle on doing defenses, it takes a year to make something like a Storm Shadow from scratch. So Ukraine is just being left in the lurch, and it's going to have a year and run out of missiles. And at the end of that year, there may be some new European missiles available. But if you ask me, it's too late. The war will be over by then.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ben Aris, for joining us with our perspective.
My pleasure.